Hey there guys, we're taking a look at League of Legends running on the AMD Ryzen 5 5500U, this time with the 8 gigabytes of RAM. We have not taken a look at League of Legends running on here just because it's one of those games that just tends to run on practically anything, but I was curious to see if we could actually get some high refresh rate gaming out of this, and just running at the 15 watt TDP, you can see here that we're getting some pretty solid results. Now this is with the max in-game graphics settings. If you want to hit some higher FPS, you can definitely lower things, but at the max settings, we are getting some really nice results, and of course we didn't even have to raise TDP to get that. Our 1% lows are just slightly under 60, to the point where it would be completely unnoticeable for pretty much anyone, and the overall experience of playing is really nice. Now of course I'm just doing a co-op bot match here because I am not a League of Legends player, so I don't even have access to Summoner's Rift. I pretty much still need to do, I guess, some practice games to gain access to it. I'm not 100% sure how that works, but this is pretty much the only thing I have access to. But just in general, the results that we get are just really impressive. This is just one of those games that was designed to run on toasters 10 years ago. So at this point, pretty much anything out there could play it. And it's to the point now where it's not even just integrated graphics will get you a 60 FPS average. It's now integrated graphics can let you actually utilize a high refresh rate display. And of course, this is just at the 15 watt TDP. We could potentially raise things to see if we can get a even better result. So we can raise the TDP up to 25 watts and see what that actually ends up doing for us. And raising the TDP up to 25 watts doesn't really net us too much of an increase. We're mostly hitting 1% lows that are now comfortably above 60, and our averages are just slightly under 100 FPS. Not a major increase, but you'll see that our power usage isn't even reaching all the way up to 25 watts. The reason for that is that the game just does not utilize enough of the hardware to really even need the full 25 watt TDP. You'll see that the GPU most of the time is not even maxed out because it doesn't need to be, and the game is not multi-threaded at all. It's pretty much just using one thread, so the CPU is already at max utilization, and so what's happening there is that extra power headroom that we put there is just not necessary. So the system is running pretty much right now at its maximum potential, and really I'm just overall very happy with the result that I was getting here. It was very enjoyable to actually play like this. The level of performance that we were getting was more than acceptable. I was playing this hooked up to a 144 hertz display, and that higher refresh rate was more than welcome. So really, League of Legends is just one of those games that I think overall works perfectly on low-end systems. It really is just designed for that kind of thing. And it really just has me curious what RDNA 2 could potentially get out of this, because I get the feeling that with RDNA 2, you could probably do some really high refresh rate gaming on this specific game. It just runs really, really well. And I think League of Legends actually does benefit from a higher refresh rate just because everything feels so smooth. I mean, coming off of the heels of just testing Red Dead Redemption 2, being able to play a game at this higher refresh rate that feels this smooth and responsive, it's just a whole different experience. I absolutely love it. Again, not much of a League of Legends player myself. I think this might be like the third or fourth game I've ever really played of it, but just in terms of how it performs, it does feel really, really nice to play. So if you're mostly a League player out there and you have yourself a system with this specific chip, you might want to consider getting yourself a cheap 144 hertz display. Now, I don't know if I would say to get a VA panel for it, but if you could find yourself a cheap IPS or TN panel, might not be a bad move. I mean, personally, I use a 144 hertz TN panel for testing these specific games. I've had that display for years now, and it was always such a pain to even think about getting rid of it, just because of the fact that it was just so responsive. It didn't look great, you know, compared to an IPS display, but it's so responsive. It took years for me to eventually find an IPS that was anywhere near as responsive as it, and just would feel comfortable replacing it as an actual gaming monitor. And you know, this built-in display on this laptop is already IPS, and it works decently well. So if you can get yourself a TN 144 hertz display for cheap, might not be a bad secondary display that's mostly just there for gaming. There does seem to be decent amounts of games out there that actually run really well on here. Riot Games is just the masters of making games that run on pretty much anything, with Valorant also being a game that runs really well on here, though I wish I could get this kind of FPS on Valorant. It's definitely a heavier game than League of Legends, though it also just looks better. But anyways, I hope you found this video useful. If you did, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.